For 7,000 years, the Galactic Council's wilderness trial had been a slow execution disguised as tradition. Across 300 species, fewer than 1 in 10 candidates survived the full 30 days. Most returned shattered, bones broken, minds fractured, bodies hollowed by starvation. Many never returned at all. Vidian, 7 earned its classification honestly. The air was thin enough to burn the lungs, the predators represented multiple apex lineages, and the climate swung violently between blistering heat and lethal cold. It was not a test of skill. It was a test of suffering. Jack Morrison stood before the crystalline gates calmly adjusting his standard survival pack. Inside were only the essentials permitted by council law, a knife, fire starter, water purifier, and 3 days of rations. Nothing else. No technology. No weapons. No rescue until day 30. A Zenth administrator shifted uneasily, mandibles clicking in anxious rhythm. He reminded Jack of the mortality rate. 90%. He reminded him that humanity had only recently joined the council. There was no shame in withdrawing. Jack smiled and interrupted politely. He had read the statistics. He understood the risk. He also understood wilderness. "See you in a month," he said, stepping forward as the gates parted. From the observation deck, Emma Mitchell watched with clenched fists. As head xenobiologist for Earth's delegation, she had argued relentlessly against this trial. It was outdated, brutal, and scientifically meaningless. Ambassador Thelner voiced what many believed, that Jack was either reckless or foolish. Emma didn't answer. She knew Jack's background. He had grown up in isolation, trained others to survive with nothing, and treated hostile environments like puzzles rather than enemies. Still, Vidian, 7 was not Earth. The first week unfolded predictably. Jack located water, constructed shelter, and avoided the chrome-scaled hunters stalking the purple forests. He identified edible fungi and set snares using techniques passed down through generations. He moved patiently, deliberately, conserving energy. He wasn't trying to conquer the planet. He was learning it. On the 8th day, the pattern broke. One of his snares caught a small crystalline creature, no larger than a terrier. Its leg was badly twisted, its multifaceted eyes filled with pain. Logic demanded a kill. Protein mattered. Survival mattered. Jack ignored logic. He spent hours splinting the injury and shared his rations. "This is stupid," he muttered. The creature licked his hand and stayed. That decision would change everything. Jack named the creature Prism, mostly as a joke, but the name stuck. As days passed, Prism's limp faded, replaced by an alert, curious energy that never strayed far from Jack's side. What began as an act of compassion quickly became something far more important. Prism understood the forest in ways Jack never could. It growled warnings moments before predators appeared, guided him to hidden water sources, and pawed frantically at soil concealing nutrient-dense tubers. The planet was no longer silent. It was speaking through Prism. By the end of the second week, Jack wasn't just surviving. He was thriving. He upgraded his tools, using his knife to fashion spear points and cutting implements. When a chrome-scaled hunter attacked, Prism distracted it long enough for Jack to kill it cleanly. The pelt shimmered with iridescent color, tougher than any hide Jack had worked before. He processed it carefully, respecting the material. One success led to others. 6-legged deer analogues roamed the plains in abundance. Their meat smoked beautifully over the right wood. The human instinct to prepare for uncertainty took over completely. Jack built a smoking rack, cured meat into long-lasting jerky, and began storing food. By week 3, his shelter had evolved into a semi-permanent structure with waterproof roofing and insulated walls. Pelts stacked neatly nearby. Prism became an expert hunting partner, flushing prey toward Jack's carefully placed throws. It wasn't domination. It was cooperation. When the extraction beacon activated on day 30, Jack felt genuine disappointment. He had routines now. Systems. Plans for improvement. The gates reopened to reveal medical teams and grim council officials expecting trauma. Instead, Jack emerged healthy, tanned, and dragging a sled stacked with pristine pelts. A leather pack bulged with smoked meat. Prism trotted beside him happily, crystalline fur catching artificial light. Silence crushed the chamber. The administrator finally found his voice, staring at Prism. Jack introduced her casually and asked if pets were against the rules. Emma pushed forward, torn between fury and relief. Jack handed her wrapped specimens, plants, fungi, predator scales. He had taken notes. In his downtime. When he offered food, no one moved until a wounded Corinthian veteran tasted the jerky and admitted it was exceptional. Jack explained the smoking process cheerfully. The administrators could barely comprehend what they were witnessing. The test was designed for desperation, not domestic success. Jack frowned, confused. Was I supposed to have a hard time? Prism barked in agreement. And in that moment, the council learned something unsettling. Humans didn't just endure hostile worlds. They adapted. They settled. And sometimes, they made friends. The chamber did not erupt in applause. It didn't need to. The realization settling over the Galactic Council was far heavier than celebration. For 7 millennia, the wilderness test had reinforced a singular narrative, that survival meant suffering, isolation, and near-death experience. Jack Morrison had dismantled that myth without meaning to. He hadn't fought the planet. He hadn't dominated it. He had listened, adapted, and cooperated. Emma stood beside him as council members whispered in disbelief. The Zenth administrator finally spoke again, voice brittle. No candidate in recorded history had returned with surplus resources, ecological samples, or a bonded native organism. The trial's purpose had never included success beyond endurance. Jack had reframed the entire concept by treating the environment as a system instead of an enemy. The implications spread rapidly. If humans could not only survive death worlds but integrate into them, then countless council doctrines were flawed. Wilderness tests weren't measuring capability. They were filtering mindset. Species trained to resist nature broke under its weight. A species raised to adapt flourished. Prism became the focal point of the discussion. Xenobiologists observed her behavior with awe. She wasn't a domesticated pet. She was a partner. A mutual survival bond forged without dominance or coercion. Emma recognized the significance immediately. Humans had evolved alongside animals, learning cooperation long before technology. That instinct had followed them into space. Ambassador Thelner finally addressed Jack directly. His species had lost dozens to Vidian, 7. He asked what Jack had done differently. Jack thought for a moment, then shrugged. I stopped trying to win, he said. I just lived there. That answer unsettled them more than any bravado. The wilderness test had always been a trial of ego, prove strength, prove toughness, prove worth. Jack had ignored the unspoken competition entirely. He had treated the planet like a home temporarily loaned to him. Policy discussions followed quickly. The test would be suspended. Survival metrics would be reviewed. Death worlds reclassified. Emma submitted Jack's notes, which were more detailed than centuries of archived data combined. Vidian, 7 wasn't impossibly lethal. It was misunderstood. As Jack prepared to leave, Prism padded along beside him without hesitation. The administrator hesitated, then formally acknowledged Prism as Jack's companion under council law. A precedent no one expected. The wilderness test had been meant to humble humanity. Instead, it revealed something far more dangerous. Humans didn't measure survival in days endured. They measured it in comfort achieved. In ecosystems understood. In bonds formed. And as Jack Morrison walked away, carrying supplies instead of scars, the galaxy quietly recalculated what it meant to be human. Long after Jack Morrison left the council chambers, the story of Vidian, 7 spread. Not as legend, but as an uncomfortable case study. The wilderness test was officially suspended, its mortality rate labeled unacceptable rather than honorable. For the first time in council history, tradition yielded to evidence. The most troubling conclusion wasn't that Jack survived. It was how easily he did it once he stopped obeying the test's unspoken assumptions. The council had designed the trial to strip candidates down to desperation. Humans responded by rebuilding stability from nothing. They didn't endure chaos. They reorganized it. Xenobiology departments requested Prism's data. Survival instructors reviewed Jack's shelter schematics. Environmental strategists studied his food storage methods. Every analysis reached the same conclusion: human survival behavior wasn't reactive. It was proactive. Humans planned for futures even when none were guaranteed. Emma submitted her final report with one key observation. Humans evolved in unstable ecosystems where weather, predators, and resources constantly shifted. Adaptation wasn't a strategy. It was instinct. While other species optimized for efficiency, humans optimized for resilience. That difference mattered. The Council quietly removed wilderness testing as a prerequisite for membership advancement. Instead, they requested human consultation for hostile environment protocols. Jack declined formal military roles. He returned to teaching, content with quieter contributions. Prism remained with him, a symbol of something the galaxy was only beginning to understand. The lesson of Vidian 7 spread beyond politics. Colonization strategies changed. Instead of sterilizing worlds, humans advocated coexistence. Instead of fortifying against nature, they studied it. The results were undeniable. Fewer casualties. More sustainable outposts. Stronger alliances. The wilderness test had assumed survival meant suffering alone. Jack Morrison proved that survival could mean preparation, cooperation, and curiosity. He didn't conquer a death world. He made it livable. And that truth unsettled the galaxy far more than any weapon ever could. Because a species that could turn a nightmare into a campsite wasn't just resilient. It was adaptable beyond prediction. A species that made friends where others made graves would eventually feel at home anywhere. The stars realized something important that day. Humans didn't just survive hostile environments. They normalized them. And once they did, they never left the same world behind again.